Commander Jake Morrison stood at the large window of the Earth Defense Station Titan. The station was huge, floating high above Earth in the cold darkness of space. Jake looked down at the blue and green planet below. It was beautiful and peaceful. He had no idea that in a few hours, everything would change forever. The year was 2387. Earth had been alone for so long that most people forgot they might not be the only ones in the universe. But Jake and his team knew better. They had been listening to space for decades. They had heard strange signals from far away. They knew something was out there. Dr. Lisa Kim sat at her computer in the station's main room. She was Earth's best expert at understanding alien languages. Her job was to listen for messages from space and try to understand what they meant. She had been doing this work for 10 years, but she had never received a real message from aliens. Before today was different. A loud beeping sound came from her computer. Lisa looked at the screen and saw something that made her heart race. There was a message coming from deep space. It was strong and clear. Someone was trying to talk to Earth. Lisa called out to the others. "Commander Morrison, Captain Foster, come here quickly. We have something." Jake Morrison hurried over to Lisa's desk. Captain Ryan Foster, who worked for Earth's Defense Council, came running too. They both looked at the screen with wide eyes. "What is it?" Jake asked. Lisa's hands moved quickly over her keyboard. "It's a message, a real message from space, and it's not friendly." The message was being translated by Lisa's computer. The words appeared on the screen in English, but everyone could tell they came from somewhere very far away. The message was cold and businesslike, like a letter from a government office. "To the species of the third planet, from the star you call Sol," the message began. "You have been selected for integration into the Galactic Empire. Your world contains resources that the Empire requires. Your species will be relocated to designated work planets. You have 72 hours to surrender. If you do not surrender, your planet will be destroyed. This is not a request. This is an order." The room became very quiet. Jake felt his stomach drop. Lisa stared at the screen. Ryan Foster read the message 3 times before he could speak. "This has to be some kind of joke," Ryan said, but his voice was shaking. "It's not a joke," Lisa said quietly. "The signal is coming from outside our solar system. The technology is real. And there's more." She pressed a button and more text appeared. The message continued with details about the Galactic Empire. It said they had conquered over 400 worlds. They had ships that could destroy entire planets. They had weapons that could kill millions of people in seconds. No one had ever fought them, and one. Jake took a deep breath. "We need to contact Admiral Sullivan right away." Admiral Kate Sullivan was the head of Earth's secret defense program. Most people on Earth didn't know she existed. Her job was to prepare for the day when Earth might be attacked from space. That day had finally come. Within an hour, Admiral Sullivan arrived at the station. She was a strong woman with gray hair and serious eyes. She read the alien message and nodded slowly. "I've been waiting for this day for 30 years, she said. "Call an emergency meeting of the Global Defense Council. We have a decision to make." The Global Defense Council was made up of leaders from every country on Earth. They met in a secret underground base hidden deep in the Rocky Mountains. The base was so secret that even most government leaders didn't know about it. Representatives from America, China, Russia, India, and 50 other countries gathered around a large table. Admiral Sullivan stood at the front of the room and told them about the alien message. "They want us to surrender," she said. "If we don't, they will destroy our planet. They have done this to 400 other worlds. No one has ever beaten them." The room filled with worried voices. Some people wanted to surrender to save lives. Others wanted to fight no matter what happened. "We can't fight them," said the representative. "From Japan, they have ships that can destroy planets. We have nothing like that." "We can't surrender either," said the representative from America. "They want to make us slaves. That's not living." The debate went on for hours. Then Chief Engineer Ben Carter stood up. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke at meetings. But when he did speak, everyone listened. "I have something to show you," Ben said. He pressed a button, and a large screen came down from the ceiling. Pictures appeared showing underground cities, hidden weapons, and secret technology. "For the past 100 years, we have been preparing for this day," Ben continued. "We built underground cities that can protect billions of people. We built weapons that look like peaceful satellites. We built ships that can hide in space. And we built something else." More pictures appeared. They showed mining operations on asteroids throughout the solar system. But these weren't really mining operations. They were weapon platforms disguised to look harmless. "We have been studying every alien signal we could find," Ben said. "We know their technology. We know their weapons. We know their tactics. And we know their weaknesses." The room became very quiet. Admiral Sullivan smiled for the first time that day. "We have a choice," she said. "We can surrender and become slaves, or we can fight and show them what humans are really capable of. But if we fight, we have to be smart about it. We have to make them think we are weak and then show them how wrong they are." The vote was taken. Every country agreed. Earth would not surrender. Instead, they would send the aliens a message of their own. "We will give them one warning, Admiral," Sullivan said. "Just one. After that, they will learn why humans have survived every challenge we have ever faced." Outside the mountain base, the stars looked peaceful and quiet. But somewhere among those stars, alien ships were heading toward Earth. They thought they were coming to conquer a weak and primitive world. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Lieutenant Alex Rodriguez sat in the pilot's seat of his ship, the Defiant. The ship was small and looked simple, like the kind of craft humans used to explore space. But Alex knew better. Hidden under the plain metal hull were materials and technology that didn't exist anywhere else in the galaxy. The Defiant had launched from a secret base on the dark side of the moon. No alien sensors could detect it there. Alex's job was simple but dangerous. He had to deliver humanity's answer to the Galactic Empire. He had to give them their one and only warning. Alex flew his ship toward the massive alien fleet that hung in space like a dark cloud. The enemy ships were enormous. The largest one was called the Eternal Dominion, and it was bigger than any city on Earth. It stretched over 50 kilometers from front to back and was covered with weapons that could destroy entire continents. As Alex got closer, he could see hundreds of other ships surrounding the main vessel. They were all different shapes and sizes, but they all looked deadly. Some were long and thin, like spears. Others were round and covered with spikes. All of them had weapons pointing outward, ready to destroy anything that came too close. Alex spoke into his radio. "This is Lieutenant Rodriguez to Earth Control. I can see the enemy fleet. They're even bigger than we thought." "Copy that, Alex," came the reply from Admiral Sullivan. "Remember, you're just delivering a message. Don't let them provoke you. Say what you need to say and get out of there." "Understood, Admiral." Alex's ship was surrounded by bright lights as the aliens pulled him into their main vessel. He felt the Defiant shake as huge metal arms grabbed it and pulled it into a landing bay. The bay was so large that Alex felt like a tiny ant walking into a giant's house. Alien soldiers were waiting for him when he stepped out of his ship, were tall and covered in metal armor. Their faces were hidden behind masks, but Alex could see their eyes glowing red through the dark visors. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. The soldiers led Alex through long corridors filled with strange lights and sounds. The walls were covered with symbols that hurt to look at. The air smelled like metal, and something else that Alex couldn't identify. It was the smell of fear from 1,000 conquered worlds. Finally, they arrived at the bridge of the ship. It was a huge room with a ceiling so high that Alex couldn't see the top. In the center of the room sat Admiral Vex Corthane, the commander of the Galactic Empire's regional fleet. Corthane was terrifying to look at. He was 7 feet tall and looked like a giant lizard that could walk on 2 legs. His skin was covered in green and black scales that changed color when he moved. He had 4 arms, each one ending in sharp claws. His eyes were yellow and looked at Alex like he was a bug that needed to be crushed. Around Corthane stood his crew. There were dozens of different alien species, all of them much larger and more frightening than humans. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had multiple heads or eyes all over their bodies. All of them were looking at Alex and laughing. "So this is what passes for humanity's finest warrior," Corthane said in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. His words were translated by a machine, but Alex could hear the mockery in his tone. Alex stood straight and tall, even though he was afraid. He wore a simple blue uniform that looked plain compared to all the alien armor around him, but he remembered his training. He remembered what he was here to do. "I am Lieutenant Alex Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force," he said in a clear, strong voice. "I have been sent to deliver a message from the people of Earth." The aliens laughed even louder. Some of them made sounds that Alex didn't recognize, but that clearly meant they thought he was funny. "Speak, little human," Corthane said. "Tell us what your pathetic species has to say before we destroy your world." Alex took a deep breath. "The people of Earth have received your ultimatum. We have discussed it and made our decision. We decline your offer of integration. We will not surrender our planet or our freedom." The laughter stopped. Corthane's scales turned a darker color. "Furthermore," Alex continued, "in the interest of avoiding unnecessary bloodshed, we strongly advise you to leave our solar system immediately. Turn your ships around and go back to wherever you came from. This is your only warning." The bridge erupted in laughter again, but this time it was louder and more cruel. Some of the aliens made sounds that Alex was sure were curses in their languages. Others pointed at him with whatever they used for hands. Corthane stood up from his chair. He was even more frightening when he was standing. His 4 arms spread wide, and his claws caught the light from the bridge's strange lamps. "Little human," he said, his voice full of amusement. "Do you have any idea what you're saying? Do you understand who you're talking to?" "I understand perfectly," Alex replied calmly. "We have a fleet of 200 ships," Corthane continued. "Each one of them is more powerful than anything your species has ever built. We have weapons that can crack planets in half. We have conquered 400 worlds. Entire civilizations have fallen before us. And you think you can warn us?" Corthane walked closer to Alex. The human could smell the alien's breath, which was like rotting meat mixed with sulfur. "What exactly do you think your primitive species can do to the mighty Galactic Empire?" Corthane asked. Alex looked up at the towering alien without flinching. "We've studied your records, Admiral. We know about the 400 worlds you've conquered. We've analyzed your weapons, your ships, your tactics. We know exactly what you're capable of." He paused and let his words sink in. "The question is, do you know what we're capable of?" Corthane's scales changed color again, this time to a deep red. "Enlighten me, little human." "We're capable of giving you this one chance to leave peacefully," Alex said. "We're capable of showing mercy to those who don't deserve it. We're capable of warning our enemies before we destroy them. What you do next is entirely your choice. The bridge became completely silent. Even the strange humming sounds from the ship's engines seemed to quiet down. Every alien on the bridge was staring at Alex with expressions he couldn't read. "You're serious," Corthane said finally. "Completely serious," Alex replied. "You actually think you can defeat us? I think you should take our warning seriously and leave while you still can." Corthane stared at Alex for a long moment. Then he threw back his head and laughed louder than before. The sound was so loud that it echoed through the entire bridge. "You have spirit, little human," he said. "I will give you that. But spirit won't save you from what's coming." Alex nodded politely. "I've delivered my message. Unless you have questions, I'll be returning to my ship." "Oh, you'll be returning to your ship," Corthane said. "But you won't be going back to Earth. You'll have a front row seat to watch your planet burn." Alex turned and began walking toward the exit. The alien soldiers moved to block his path, but Corthane waved them away. "Let him go," the Admiral said. "I want him to see what happens to species that dare to threaten the Empire." As Alex walked back through the corridors, he could hear Corthane giving orders to his crew. The Admiral was changing the invasion schedule. Instead of waiting for the full 72 hours, he wanted to attack immediately. He wanted to make humanity's destruction, especially, brutal as an example to any other species that might think about resisting. Alex climbed back into his ship and flew away from the alien fleet. Once he was clear of their sensors, he activated his radio. "Earth Control, this is Rodriguez." Message delivered. They didn't take it seriously. "Copy that, Alex," came Admiral Sullivan's voice. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Admiral. But they're planning to attack early. They want to make an example of us." "Let them come," Sullivan said. "It's time to show them what happens when someone threatens humanity." Alex looked back at the alien fleet one last time. The ships looked like metal monsters floating in the darkness. Soon they would learn that appearances could be deceiving. They would learn that humans were much more dangerous. And they looked. The warning had been given. Now it was time for war. The attack began at dawn, Earth time. Admiral Corthane was angry after his meeting with the human messenger. He decided to teach humanity a lesson they would never forget. He sent 50 of his best ships to destroy what he thought were Earth's only defenses. The alien warships moved in perfect formation through space. Each ship was enormous, bigger than Earth's largest cities. They were covered in weapons that glowed with deadly energy. The crews inside were excited. They had destroyed hundreds of worlds before. This would be easy. Captain Steve Walsh watched the enemy ships approach from his hiding place inside an asteroid. His ship, the Vengeance, was completely hidden from alien sensors. It looked like just another piece of rock floating in space. But underneath the disguise, it was one of the most advanced warships ever built. Steve's crew of 50 humans sat quietly at their stations. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. They knew that the fate of Earth depended on what happened in the next few hours. "All stations report," Steve said quietly into his headset. "Weapons ready," came the reply from Lieutenant Tom Bradley, the ship's weapons officer. "Engines ready," said Engineer Carol Martinez. "Sensors tracking 50 enemy ships," reported Navigation Officer Dan Cooper. Steve nodded. Everything was going according to plan. The aliens thought they were attacking a weak and helpless world. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Empire's ships reached their first targets. These were what appeared to be mining platforms and defense satellites orbiting Earth. The aliens had detected them easily with their sensors. They looked primitive and defenseless. "Fire at will," commanded Admiral Corthane from his flagship. Bright beams of superheated energy lanced out from the alien ships. The plasma weapons were incredibly powerful. They could melt steel and vaporize rock. The beams hit their targets perfectly, and the alien crews cheered as they watched. Explosions bloom in the darkness of space, but something was wrong. The explosions looked strange. Instead of the debris and fire the aliens expected, something else was happening. The destroyed satellites were shedding their outer shells like snakes shedding their skin. Underneath the fake exteriors, sleek black shapes emerged. They were nothing like the primitive satellites the aliens thought they had destroyed. These were weapons platforms built by human engineers who had been preparing for this day for decades. Colonel Amy Foster sat in the command center on the moon's hidden base. She watched the battle unfold on dozens of screens. When she saw the alien ships fire their first shots, she smiled. "All units, this is Control," she said into her microphone. "You are free to engage. Show them what we've learned." The asteroid belt suddenly came alive. Rocks that had been floating peacefully in space for millions of years opened up like mechanical flowers. Hidden inside were massive weapons that had been built in secret over many years. The aliens had thought the asteroids were just space junk. They were wrong. Each asteroid contained a fortress with guns powerful enough to destroy ships. There were hundreds of them, all connected by a network that allowed them to work together. The first shot from humanity's hidden fleet was devastating. A railgun fired a piece of metal at nearly the speed of light. The projectile was small, bigger than a baseball, but it was moving so fast that it hit with the force of a nuclear bomb. The projectile punched through the shields of an alien cruiser like they weren't even there. The ship's armor, which had protected it through 100 battles, was torn apart like paper. The massive vessel broke in half and exploded in a ball of fire. "Impossible," whispered one of the alien gunners as he watched his ship's sister vessel die. But that was just the beginning. All across the solar system, human weapons opened fire. Gravity weapons twisted space itself, crushing alien ships like tin cans. Energy beams cut through whole metal like it was butter. Missiles that could think for themselves chased enemy ships through space. 3 more alien ships were destroyed. In the first minute, their crews had no time to react. The weapons hitting them shouldn't have existed. According to everything the Empire knew about physics, humans shouldn't have been able to build such things. How is this possible? Admiral Corthane shouted at his science officer. Our intelligence showed no advanced technology. The science officer, a creature that looked like a giant spider, was frantically working at his control panel. "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures that don't match any known technology. These weapons are using principles we don't understand." More human ships appeared out of nowhere. They had been hiding in the shadows of planets, disguised as space debris, or simply invisible to alien sensors. Each one was smaller than the Empire's vessels, but they moved faster and hit harder. Commander Jake Morrison, now leading the human fleet from his ship the Freedom's Edge, opened a communication channel to the alien fleet. "Admiral Corthane," he said, his voice calm and clear. "You were warned. You chose not to listen. Now you're learning what happens when you threaten humanity." "This is impossible," Corthane screamed back. "You're a primitive species. You don't even have faster than light travel." "You're right," Jake replied. "We don't have faster than light travel. We had to build everything else instead. When you spend 400 years telling the galaxy that resistance is futile, you give species like us a very clear goal to work toward." The battle raged throughout the solar system. Human ships used tactics the aliens had never seen before. They didn't try to fight the Empire's vessels one-on-one. Instead, they attacked in groups, hitting fast and then disappearing before the aliens could respond. Lieutenant Sarah Kim piloted her fighter, the Wasp, through a formation of enemy ships. Her craft was tiny compared to the alien vessels, but it was fast and nearly invisible. She fired a single torpedo into the engine of a cruiser and watched it explode before racing away. "Target destroyed," she reported. Moving to next objective. The aliens tried to adapt, but they couldn't. They had been fighting the same way for thousands of years. They relied on big ships, heavy armor, and overwhelming firepower. They didn't know how to fight an enemy that refused to play by their rules. Captain Rodriguez, who had delivered humanity's warning, was now flying a stealth ship called the Shadow. His job was to get close to enemy vessels and plant devices that would disrupt their communications. "Ghost Team, this is Rodriguez," he said to his squadron. "I'm seeing an opening in their formation. Following me in." 6 small human ships slipped between the alien vessels like fish swimming through a net. They were so small and fast that the enemy gunners couldn't hit them. Within minutes, they had planted their devices on a dozen enemy ships. Suddenly, the alien fleet lost the ability to talk to each other. Ships that had been coordinating their attacks were now fighting alone. Without communication, their formations fell apart. "Sir, we've lost contact with the fleet," reported Corthane's communication. "Officer, something is jamming our signals." Corthane looked at his tactical display and saw his fleet scattering in all directions. Ships that should have been supporting each other were now isolated and vulnerable. "Order all ships to retreat," he commanded. "We need to regroup." But it was too late. The humans had been waiting for this moment. Captain Walsh brought the Vengeance out of hiding, along with dozens of other ships that had been waiting in the asteroid belt. "This is Walsh to all units," he said. "The enemy is running. Don't let them escape." The final part of the battle was swift and brutal. The alien ships that had come to conquer Earth were now trying to run away. But human ships were faster and more maneuverable. They chased the aliens through space, picking them off one by one. Of the 50 ships that had begun the attack, only 12 managed to escape. They raced back to Admiral Corthane's main fleet, their crews traumatized by what they had experienced. "Report," Corthane demanded when the survivors returned. "Sir," said the captain of one of the damaged ships, "they have weapons we don't understand. Ships that appear out of nowhere. Tactics we've never seen before. They fought like demons." Corthane stared at the tactical reports. In 1 hour, his elite attack force had been destroyed by a species he had considered primitive. Humans had weapons that his science teams insisted were impossible. They had ships that didn't show up on sensors. They had strategies that seemed to predict his moves before he made them. "This changes nothing," he said finally. "Contact the other sectors. I want reinforcements. All of them." "Sir, that would be over 400 ships," his aide said. "Then we'll bring 400 ships," Corthane replied. "If the humans want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." But as he gave the order, Corthane couldn't shake the feeling that he was making a terrible mistake. The humans had warned him to leave. They had given him a chance to avoid bloodshed. He had ignored their warning and attacked anyway. Now he was beginning to understand that the humans hadn't been bluffing. They had been showing mercy. And mercy, he was learning, was something the Galactic Empire had never really understood. The war was just beginning, and already Corthane was starting to realize that his empire might have finally met its match. Admiral Corthane was not used to losing. In his long military career, he had never been defeated. The Empire had given him the biggest fleet in their history, and he was determined to use it to crush the human resistance, once and for all. Reinforcements arrived from 3 different sectors of the galaxy. Massive ships filled with alien warriors came through space portals that bent the laws of physics. Within 5 days, Corthane's fleet had grown to over 400 ships. It was the largest invasion force ever assembled. The new fleet was impressive and terrifying. There were battleships the size of mountains, carriers that held thousands of fighter craft, and destroyers that could turn planets into dust. The combined firepower was enough to destroy entire star systems. "This time will be different," Corthane told his officers. "We will not underestimate these humans again. We will attack from all directions at once. We will use overwhelming force. We will show them what happens when someone dares to challenge the Empire." But Commander Jake Morrison, now leading all human forces, wasn't planning to fight the same battle twice. He stood in the command center of his ship, the Freedom's Edge, studying the enemy fleet positions. "They're trying to surround us," he said to his officers. "They want to force us into a direct fight where their numbers matter. How do we respond?" Asked Captain Walsh. Jake smiled. "We don't fight fair. We never have. That's what makes us human." The truth was that Earth's entire fleet consisted of only 80 ships. Against 400 enemy vessels, a direct battle would be suicide. But humans had never been ones to fight fair fights. They had always found ways to win by being smarter, faster, and more creative than their enemies. The second battle began with the Empire attacking from 6 different directions at once. Corthane had learned from his first defeat. This time, he wouldn't give the humans a chance to use their tricks. But the humans were ready for him. Instead of trying to defend fixed positions, they turned the entire solar system into a battlefield. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid became part of their strategy. Major Chris Johnson piloted his fighter, the Ghost, through the space between Mars and Jupiter. His ship was so small that it barely registered on enemy sensors. But it carried something that would change the course of the battle. "Ghost Leader to control," he said into his radio. "I'm approaching the enemy formation. Beginning attack run." "Copy that, Ghost Leader. Good luck." Chris flew his tiny ship straight into the middle of the alien fleet. Massive enemy vessels surrounded him on all sides. Their guns were bigger than his entire ship. But he wasn't trying to fight them directly. Instead, he flew underneath the belly of their biggest ship, a command carrier that was 30 kilometers long. The alien gunners couldn't hit him because he was too close to their own vessel. Chris fired a single torpedo. It was no bigger than a suitcase, but it contained something the Empire had never seen before. The torpedo exploded against the carrier's hull, but instead of causing damage, it released a cloud of tiny machines. The machines were smaller than dust particles, but they were programmed to do one thing: find the enemy ship's reactor and cause it to overload. Within minutes, the massive carrier began to shake and spark. "What's happening?" demanded the carrier's captain. "Sir, our reactor is going critical," replied the engineer. "Something is causing it to overload." The huge ship, which had conquered dozens of worlds, broke apart in a silent explosion that lit up the dark side of Mars. The blast was so bright that it could be seen from Earth. "How?" Corthane asked his science officer. "How does a ship that small carry a weapon that powerful?" "It doesn't, sir," came the reply. "According to our analysis, the weapon was created during the approach. The humans are somehow making antimatter as they need it." The truth was even more impressive than the aliens realized. Humans hadn't just built better weapons. They had built better minds. Every battle taught them something new about their enemies. Every engagement made them stronger and smarter. Dr. Helen Martinez, Earth's top scientist, explained it to the Defense Council from her laboratory deep underground. The Empire conquers through fear and superior technology. They've done it the same way for thousands of years. But we've studied every single one of their battles. We know their weaknesses better than they do. "What do you mean?" asked Admiral Sullivan. "They always fight the same way," Helen continued. "Big ships, heavy weapons, direct attacks. They've never faced an enemy that could adapt and change. We can." The battle moved throughout the solar system. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts. They would attack an enemy formation, destroy several ships, and then vanish before the aliens could respond. Captain Rodriguez, now commanding the stealth cruiser Retribution, led a strike team directly into the heart of the enemy fleet. But instead of attacking the ships themselves, the humans did something the aliens never expected. They attacked the Empire's communication network. "Strike Team Alpha, this is Rodriguez," he said to his pilots. "Target the communication arrays, not the weapons. We want to blind them, not kill them." The human ships were so small and fast that they could fly between the alien vessels without being seen. They planted devices on the enemy's communication equipment and then disappeared back into space. Within minutes, the massive alien fleet lost the ability to coordinate. Ships that had been working together for years suddenly couldn't talk to each other. Without communication, their careful battle plans fell apart. "Sir, we've lost contact with the entire fleet," reported Corthane's communication officer. "All ships are operating independently." Corthane stared at his tactical display in horror. His perfectly organized fleet was now scattered across the solar system like lost sheep. Ships were firing at shadows. Formations were breaking apart. Some vessels were even accidentally shooting at their own allies. "This is impossible," he muttered. "How did they disable our entire network?" The answer came from Jake Morrison, whose voice suddenly filled the bridge of every alien ship in the fleet. "Admiral Corthane, you're learning what humans do best. We adapt, we learn, we overcome. Your empire has been fighting the same way for thousands of years. But we've been studying you. We know your weaknesses." "You cannot defeat us," Corthane replied. "We have 400 ships. You have less than 100. Numbers don't matter when you can't use them properly," Jake said. "You wanted to fight. U.S. Now you're learning what it means to fight humanity." The chaos in the alien fleet grew worse. Ships were crashing into each other. Weapons were firing at random targets. The careful discipline that had made the Empire successful was crumbling. Human ships took advantage of the confusion. They struck at isolated enemy vessels, picked off ships that had strayed from their groups, and rescued any aliens who surrendered. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, now promoted to captain, led a squadron of fighters against a group of enemy destroyers. The alien ships were much larger than her fighters, but they were alone and confused. "Phoenix Squadron, this is Kim," she said to her pilots. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to save lives. Target their engines and weapons, not their life support." The human fighters danced around the enemy ships like bees around a bear. They were too small and fast to hit, but their weapons were precise and deadly. Within minutes, the alien destroyers were disabled, but not destroyed. "Enemy vessels, this is Captain Kim," she broadcast. "Your weapons are disabled. Your engines are offline. Surrender now, and we'll provide medical assistance to your wounded." One by one, the alien ships surrendered. Their crews had never seen anything like the human fighting style. It was efficient, but not cruel. Deadly, but not wasteful. The humans could have killed them all, but they chose not to. The tide of the battle turned completely when Admiral Sullivan, commanding the Earth defense ship Indomitable, cornered Admiral Corthane's flagship. The massive Eternal Dominion was surrounded by the wreckage of its escort fleet. The human ship was tiny compared to the alien vessel, but Corthane had learned to fear small human ships. He had watched them destroy his entire fleet. "Admiral Corthane," Sullivan said over the radio, "you have one chance. Surrender now, and you can leave with your surviving ships. Continue fighting, and we'll show you why 400 worlds couldn't stop us." Corthane looked around his bridge. Half his crew was wounded. His ship was damaged. His fleet was scattered and broken. For the first time in his career, he was truly defeated. "I don't understand," he said. "How did you do this? How did you defeat the Empire? We didn't defeat the Empire, Sullivan replied. We defeated you. There's a difference. The Empire conquers through fear and force. We defend through intelligence and cooperation. That's why. We won. Corthane's shoulders sagged. He had been so sure that his massive fleet would crush the humans. Instead, they had turned his own size against him. I surrender, he said quietly. The second battle was over. The largest invasion force in galactic history had been defeated by a handful of human ships. But this was just the beginning of something much bigger. As the alien survivors gathered their wounded and prepared to leave, they carried with them a message that would spread throughout the galaxy. The Empire could be beaten. Someone had actually done it. And that message would change everything. Admiral Corthane's surrender was only the beginning. News of the impossible victory spread through the Empire's communication networks faster than official reports could stop it. The message was simple but powerful. The Empire could be beaten. On the distant world of Zelfara, former General Doc Morin sat in his underground hideout. The four-armed creature had fought the Empire for 3 years before his planet was conquered. Now he was part of a small resistance group that had been hiding in caves for over a decade. Doc's communication device crackled with a weak signal from deep space. At first, he thought it was Empire propaganda. But as he listened, his 4 hearts began beating faster. This is impossible, he whispered to his fellow rebels. The humans actually did it. They defeated an entire Imperial fleet. The recording showed human ships destroying vessels that were 100 times their size. It showed the mighty Admiral Corthane surrendering to a species the Empire had considered primitive. Most importantly, it showed that resistance wasn't futile. Similar reactions were happening across the galaxy. On 400 conquered worlds, beings who had given up hope were suddenly filled with new energy. The Empire had always seemed unstoppable, but someone had actually stopped them. Director Sam Williams sat in his new office in the ruins of the old United Nations building in New York. The building had been rebuilt and expanded to handle Earth's new role in galactic affairs. Sam's job was to coordinate with the growing resistance movements across the galaxy. His desk was covered with messages from dozens of different species. They all wanted the same thing: help fighting the Empire. Some asked for weapons. Others wanted ships. All of them wanted to know how humanity had won. Sir, said his assistant, Lieutenant Carol Davis, we have another 50 requests for assistance today. The Vorthan Rebellion wants weapons. The Kalari Resistance needs communication equipment. The Nexus Freedom Fighters are asking for military advisors. Sam rubbed his tired eyes. What does Admiral Morrison recommend? He says we shouldn't give them our technology. He thinks we should give them something more valuable, which is knowledge. He wants to teach them how to think like humans. This was the approach humanity decided to take. Instead of sharing their advanced weapons, Earth sent teachers and advisors to help alien resistance groups learn new ways of fighting. Captain Rodriguez, now promoted to Admiral, led the first human diplomatic mission to the Empire's core worlds. His ship, the Defiant, had been upgraded with the latest human technology, but it still looked like a simple exploration vessel. Rodriguez's mission was to deliver another message to the Empire's High Council. It was the same type of message humanity had given Admiral Corthane: a single warning. The High Council met on the planet Zentara, the capital of the Galactic Empire. The meeting chamber was enormous, with representatives from over 1,000 worlds. Most of them were species that had been conquered by the Empire and forced to serve it. Rodriguez stood alone in the center of the vast room. Around him, alien beings of every shape and size stared down from raised platforms. Some had tentacles. Others had multiple heads. A few looked almost human, but with strange colors or extra limbs. "I am Admiral Alex Rodriguez of Earth," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system. "I bring a message from humanity to the leaders of the Galactic Empire." The chamber fell silent. Every being present had heard about the human victory over Admiral Corthine's fleet. They were curious to see what these strange creatures would say. "The age of conquest is over," Rodriguez announced. "Your empire has ruled through fear and force for thousands of years. That time is ending. You can choose to adapt to a galaxy where species cooperate instead of dominate, or you can choose to face the consequences of continued aggression." He paused and looked around the chamber. "This is your only warning." The reaction was immediate and loud. Some representatives shouted in anger. Others demanded that the human be arrested. A few, mostly from conquered worlds, remained silent but hopeful. Emperor Thraxin himself rose from his throne. He was an ancient being that looked like a cross between a dragon and a spider. His voice was like the sound of metal scraping against stone. "You dare to threaten us in our own capital?" he demanded. "You think your small victory makes you our equals?" "I think our small victory proves that you're not as powerful as you pretend to be," Rodriguez replied calmly. "I think it shows that any species willing to fight for freedom can defeat you." The Emperor's rage was visible. His scales changed color, and his multiple eyes glowed with fury. "We will mobilize every ship in the Empire. We will destroy your world and everyone on it." "You can try," Rodriguez said. "But you should know that while we've been talking, your empire has been falling apart." It was true. While the High Council had been debating what to do about the humans, rebellions had broken out across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for generations were suddenly fighting back with new tactics. Learned from human advisors that the uprising wasn't coordinated by Earth. Instead, each world was fighting its own battle for freedom. But they were all using strategies that humans had taught them: hit-and-run attacks, disrupting communications, turning the Empire's size against itself. On the industrial world of Mechanicus, robot workers had suddenly stopped following orders and begun sabotaging the factories. On the mining planet Excavator, underground teams were destroying equipment and freeing slaves. On the military base at Fortress Prime, captured weapons were being turned against their former owners, the Empires. Response was swift but ineffective. They sent fleets to crush the rebellions, but the rebels had learned from humanity's example. They didn't try to fight the Empire's ships directly. Instead, they attacked supply lines, communication networks, and isolated outposts. President Maria Santos addressed the Global Defense Council from the rebuilt United Nations building. "We've accomplished something that seemed impossible just months ago. We've shown the galaxy that freedom is possible. But winning the peace will be harder than winning the war." The task was enormous. The Galactic Empire was fragmenting into dozens of smaller states. Some were trying to become democratic. Others were descending into chaos. A few were attempting to restart their own conquest programs. Earth found itself in the strange position of being a teacher to the galaxy. Human advisors traveled to hundreds of worlds, helping new governments learn how to function without oppression. Human engineers helped rebuild planets that had been strip-mined by the Empire. Human doctors treated species that had been experimented on for generations. But not everyone wanted Earth's help. Some species resented being saved by beings they considered inferior. Others tried to use human technology for their own conquest. Plans. The war between the Nexare and the Vorthans was stopped when human peacekeepers arrived with weapons that could disable both fleets without destroying them. The Kalari attempt to build their own empire was ended when human advisors helped their enslaved populations revolt. "We're not trying to rule the galaxy," Admiral Morrison explained to a gathering of alien leaders. "We're trying to teach it how to rule itself." The process took years. Some worlds embraced democracy and cooperation. Others chose different forms of government, but agreed to respect the rights of other species. A few had to be stopped by force when they tried to restart the old ways of conquest. The Galactic Empire officially dissolved 5 years after Admiral Corthane's defeat. In its place, the Free Worlds Alliance was formed. It wasn't perfect, but it was built on cooperation instead of conquest. Admiral Morrison, now retired, stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Titan station. The view of Earth was the same as it had been when the Empire first arrived, but everything else had changed. Ships from 100 different worlds docked at human stations. Trade routes connected formerly isolated planets. Scientific discoveries were shared instead of hoarded. The galaxy was learning what humanity had always known, that cooperation was stronger than conquest. Hard to believe it all started with a single warning, said Admiral Sullivan, who had come to visit her old friend. Morrison nodded. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is giving your enemy a chance to do the right thing. On his desk was a communication device that could reach any part of the galaxy. Messages came in daily from worlds that were still struggling with freedom, still learning how to live without oppression. The final message of the day came from former Admiral Corthane. He was now living in exile on a small world at the edge of known space. His message was short but sincere. Admiral Morrison, I have been thinking about our first meeting for 5 years. I finally understand what I missed. You weren't bluffing when you warned us to leave. You were showing mercy. The Empire never understood mercy. Perhaps that's why we lost. Morrison typed a simple reply. It's never too late to learn. Outside the station, a new message was being broadcast across the galaxy. It wasn't from the Empire this time, but from the Free Worlds Alliance. It was transmitted in 1,000 languages, reaching every corner of known space. This is humanity's final message to any who would threaten the freedom of others. We are here. We are watching. And we remember what it means to be free. In the depths of space, former Imperial ships that had once carried messages of conquest now carried messages of hope. The galaxy had